Miles Patterson glanced at the calendar pinned to his cubicle wall. It was already October, the start of another quarter at Beacon Marketing, in the heart of Seattle's bustling business district. He had been here for exactly 4 years, 3 months, and 7 days she knew because he'd been counting them down subconsciously. 4 years of dedication, high performance, countless overtime hours, and hardly a vacation taken. And yet, his paycheck had remained nearly stagnant, trapped in the limbo of budget constraints and strategic prioritization. Miles let out a resigned sigh as he adjusted his navy tie. He felt a wave of déjà vu sweep over him as he stood, grabbing the familiar quarterly performance files from his desk. It was time once again for his routine meeting with Heather Wallace, his manager, a woman known for her efficiency, ambition, and a remarkable talent for dismissing employee concerns without actually addressing them. He navigated through rows of identical gray cubicles that housed the junior analysts and copywriters, each individual hunched silently over their computers, focused on endless streams of data. The atmosphere in Beacon's office had grown increasingly tense since the corporate takeover 2 years ago, when the charismatic founder, Greg Beacon, sold the company to a larger conglomerate and retired to Napa Valley. Miles still remembered the warmth of Greg's farewell speech and the sinking feeling that accompanied Heather's arrival soon after. Miles knocked on Heather's glass door. Without looking up from her tablet, she waved him inside with a flick of her manicured fingers. Heather Wallace was exactly 42, elegant, poised, and always slightly impatient. Her office reflected her personality minimalistic, immaculate, and devoid of warmth. Framed industry awards lined the walls, while a single potted succulent sat pristine and lonely on her immaculate desk. "Have a seat, Miles," she said coolly, her eyes still locked onto the tablet's glowing screen. "Thank you," Miles responded politely, sinking into the black leather chair across from her. Heather finished whatever she was reading, finally setting the tablet down to meet Miles's eyes with an expression of practiced neutrality. "All right, so, let's talk quarterly review." Miles nodded, producing a crisp, neatly stapled report. "I've compiled the analytics from the Pine Grove Foods account. We've increased their market reach significantly. Revenue from their campaign alone hit $3 million last year, a 20% growth year over year. Client satisfaction scores are above 95% consistently. All metrics indicate ongoing success." Heather skimmed the report briefly, eyes scanning the numbers without genuine interest. Miles felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach. "Yes, your performance is consistently strong," she acknowledged, pushing the report aside dismissively. "However, Beacon's strategic direction involves tightening expenditures this quarter. The executive board requires careful budgetary considerations." Miles hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I understand budgets are tight, but I've been told repeatedly we'd revisit my compensation. It's been 4 years, Heather. My salary hasn't changed substantially, despite increased responsibilities." Heather pursed her lips slightly. Miles could see her mentally crafting her reply, ensuring she neither promised nor outright refused anything. She'd mastered this evasive technique after years in corporate management. "Miles, you need to see the bigger picture. It's about strategic patience. Compensation adjustments will come in due time. Beacon values your hard work. Truly," she said smoothly, emphasizing words that no longer carried meaning. "When exactly will we revisit this?" Miles persisted calmly and professionally. "I'd appreciate a clear timeline." Heather raised an eyebrow subtly, betraying mild irritation. "We'll reassess compensation possibilities next quarter." Next quarter. The phrase echoed painfully. Miles had heard it too many times already. Each repetition wore his patience thinner. "Thank you, Heather," Miles replied softly, suppressing the frustration bubbling beneath his careful composure. She dismissed him with a polite nod, her attention already shifting back to her screen. He exited quietly, retracing his path through the maze of cubicles, returning subdued nods from colleagues who avoided prolonged eye contact, each wrestling their own quiet dissatisfaction. Back at his desk, Miles stared blankly at the open laptop, the noise around him fading into insignificance. His cubicle, once a symbol of professional promise, now seemed cramped, restrictive. Photos of family and friends taped carefully to his partition stared back at him, a reminder of the life beyond these gray walls. At 6 p.m., Miles gathered his belongings and walked silently to the parking garage. Sitting in his old Nissan Altima, the fluorescent garage lights casting a sterile glow over everything, Miles felt a deep sense of disillusionment. His father had spent 30 loyal years working for a single insurance company in Spokane, believing that loyalty inevitably equaled reward. Miles had once believed the same, But the corporate world had shifted dramatically. Back at his Capitol Hill apartment, after reheating leftover Chinese food, Miles opened his personal laptop. He hesitated momentarily, his cursor hovering over a popular job search website before finally clicking. As the page loaded, revealing rows upon rows of promising listings, Miles felt a stirring, both anxious and excited. The Seattle job market buzzed with opportunity. Marketing analyst positions appeared regularly, each description promising career growth, competitive compensation, and professional respect. Miles bookmarked several listings, feeling strangely empowered simply knowing there were viable alternatives. Before logging off, Miles received a brief text message from Jason Reed, his college roommate turned friend. "Hey, Miles, let's catch up this weekend. Drinks downtown? Heard you're still trapped at Beacon." Miles smiled slightly, replying, "Drinks sound perfect. I could use the escape." That night, sleep came slowly. Miles stared at the ceiling, mentally replaying Heather's empty promises. He realized with a newfound clarity that Heather would never willingly grant him recognition or fair compensation. The problem wasn't him, it was the company culture. He'd been waiting patiently for validation from a place incapable of providing it. The seed of change had been planted. Miles Patterson realized, perhaps clearly for the first time, that waiting for the right moment was no longer an option. The right moment wouldn't simply arrive, it needed to be created. And maybe, just maybe, his meeting with Jason Reed would be the catalyst he desperately needed. Saturday evening found Miles at a trendy rooftop bar overlooking Seattle's gleaming cityscape. Skyscrapers shimmered against the twilight horizon, punctuated by twinkling lights of office buildings still alive with activity despite the weekend. Miles stared out pensively, sipping a chilled craft beer as he awaited his friend. "Hey, Miles," Jason Reed called cheerfully, approaching with his customary exuberance. Tall, confident, and dressed smartly casual, Jason had been Miles's roommate throughout college at the University of Washington. Now, Jason worked as a senior manager at Ascend Consulting, a rapidly expanding strategic consulting firm in downtown Seattle. "Hey, Jason. Good seeing you, man," Miles replied warmly, embracing his friend briefly. They exchanged quick pleasantries, Jason signaling the bartender for another round. Settling into comfortable lounge chairs, Jason leaned forward with curiosity. "So, Beacon Marketing still? Surviving or thriving?" Miles grimaced slightly. "Barely surviving, honestly. The atmosphere's tough. Ever since the buyout, it's become increasingly corporate and impersonal. My manager, Heather, keeps promising me raises and promotions. 4 years later, same salary, same role, same excuses." Jason shook his head sympathetically. "Typical corporate politics. They'll string you along forever if you let them." Miles nodded slowly, sipping thoughtfully. "What's Ascend like these days? I've been hearing great things around town." Jason's face lit up immediately. "Miles, it's night and day. Ascend's management respects employees. Seriously, they listen. They pay market rates and actually reward talent and loyalty. Our division head, Aaron Blake, just approved substantial raises and bonuses for the whole consulting team last month. Real incentives, real acknowledgement." Miles felt a quiet pang of envy. "Sounds refreshing." Jason's expression grew thoughtful. "You know, we're actively expanding. Aaron specifically mentioned looking for someone with your marketing expertise, strategic client management especially. He values analytics-driven marketing specialists. You'd fit right in." Miles's heart raced involuntarily at the suggestion. Changing companies was daunting. Beacon had become an uncomfortable but familiar comfort zone difficult to abandon. Still, something deep inside Miles stirred restlessly at the mere possibility of feeling valued again. "I don't know." Miles hesitated cautiously. "I've been with Beacon since grad school. It feels like starting over." Jason leaned forward earnestly. "Listen, Miles. Companies like Ascend recognize value and reward it fairly. You're good if everyone knows it. Don't undervalue yourself. I can set up an informal chat with Aaron, no pressure. Just explore your options." Miles considered Jason's earnest suggestion, finally nodding slowly. "All right, let's do it." Monday morning arrived, gray and misty. Typical Seattle autumn. Miles shuffled through Beacon's lobby, feeling strangely energized by the mere prospect of potential change. By lunchtime, an unknown number lit up his cell phone. "Miles Patterson? This is Aaron Blake from Ascend Consulting," a clear, confident voice announced warmly. Miles felt a surge of adrenaline. "Hi, Aaron. Good to hear from you." Jason Reed spoke highly of your capabilities and work ethic. "Ascend's currently expanding our strategic marketing consulting division. I'd love to meet and discuss how your experience might align with our needs." Interested? Miles's heart hammered. Absolutely. Sounds great. How about Thursday, 2 p.m. at Ascend headquarters? Aaron proposed briskly, yet warmly. I'll be there, Miles replied, excitement creeping into his voice. Thursday afternoon, Miles entered Ascend Consulting's downtown office lobby, sleekly modern yet warmly inviting. Sunlight streamed through expansive glass windows overlooking Puget Sound, accentuating vibrant art pieces and comfortable yet professional decor. Immediately, Miles felt a stark contrast to Beacon's stale cubicle maze. Aaron Blake greeted him prompt Lytle, mid-40s, charismatic yet approachable. Miles, glad you could make it. Jason speaks highly of your work ethic. The interview felt refreshingly authentic. Aaron listened intently, asking insightful questions regarding Miles's client management methods, analytic strategies, and vision for client growth. Unlike Heather, Aaron maintained steady eye contact, openly appreciative of Miles's professional achievements. We value transparency here, Aaron stated plainly midway through their discussion. You'll find Ascend treats people fairly, compensates based on measurable performance, and invests in continuous employee development. He paused thoughtfully, flipping briefly through Miles's resume, then glanced up sincerely. Let's cut to the chase, Miles. Given your experience, Ascend's prepared to offer a substantial increase over your current salary at least 35% more with annual performance bonuses. We believe in rewarding people like you. Miles felt momentarily stunned. The direct recognition was shocking after Beacon's consistent dismissals. Ascend was offering the career validation Beacon had denied him repeatedly. Aaron noticed Miles's silent surprise and smiled knowingly. You deserve to know your worth. Here at Ascend, respect for talent is fundamental. Miles departed Ascend's office that afternoon, feeling simultaneously exhilarated and apprehensive. Ascend had presented an undeniably compelling opportunity. More significantly, Ascend's culture represented precisely what Beacon lacked: genuine respect, fairness, and clear acknowledgement of employee value. Returning to Beacon later, Miles observed everything with newly sharpened eyes. Heather was in a meeting behind glass doors, visibly tense and coldly detached from staff rushing around her. Junior colleagues hunched over cubicles, their exhaustion palpable. Even the broken copier, ignored for weeks, seemed symbolic of Beacon's deep-rooted apathy. Miles realized with startling clarity how normalized Beacon's dysfunction had become. He'd accepted stagnation, quietly hoping management would spontaneously recognize and reward his dedication. That evening, Miles texted Jason briefly. Ascend was impressive. Thanks again. Jason responded immediately. Glad to hear it. Remember, you deserve better. Miles stared at the words, resonating deeply. That night, Miles Patterson hardly slept, weighing loyalty against self-respect, safety against risk. He'd invested heavily at Beacon. Leaving was daunting, yet staying guaranteed continued disappointment. By dawn, Miles had reached a quiet yet powerful realizations. His career belonged solely to him. Waiting passively at Beacon would never yield professional fulfillment. Change wasn't just desirable, it was essential. Miles understood clearly. Ascend's offer wasn't simply a new job. It represented rediscovering his professional dignity and reclaiming his self-worth. Friday morning, sitting in his Nissan in Beacon's gloomy parking garage, Miles Patterson took a deep breath and dialed Aaron Blake. Aaron, it's Miles. I've thought carefully, and I'd like to formally accept your offer. Aaron's response was warmly enthusiastic. Excellent decision, Miles. Welcome aboard. Miles ended the call with relief and exhilaration. He felt like a man who'd been trapped underwater, finally surfacing into fresh air. The tension eased from his shoulders as he stepped from the car, entering Beacon marketing for what he realized, finally, would be among the last times. Beacon might have overlooked his worth, but Miles Patterson finally recognized it himself. Change was terrifying, yet infinitely preferable to remaining trapped in professional invisibility. Opportunity had knocked, Miles Patterson had answered. Miles spent the weekend preparing mentally for his impending resignation from Beacon marketing. The anxiety of his decision mixed uneasily with a newfound sense of empowerment. He imagined Heather Wallace's reaction, picturing various scenarios ranging from detached indifference to outright anger. But beneath the nervousness lay quiet certainty he was doing the right thing. Monday dawned, overcast and misty, gray clouds swirling low over Seattle's glass and steel skyline. Miles arrived at Beacon early, deciding honesty required one final direct conversation with Heather. He owed her professional transparency, even if Beacon hadn't reciprocated. At precisely 9 a.m., he knocked on Heather's frosted glass door, politely waiting until her crisp, professional voice called him inside. Her desk was immaculate as always, her expression neutral. "Yes, Miles? What can I do for you?" Miles sat down, clasping his hands calmly in his lap. He had rehearsed this moment carefully. "Heather, I've appreciated my time here at Beacon. However, as you know, we've discussed my compensation multiple times without significant progress. After thorough consideration, I've accepted an offer with another company. I'd like to provide 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately." Heather's eyes flickered briefly in surprise before she quickly masked her reaction. Her voice remained even, tinged only slightly with coldness. "I see. That's disappointing news, Miles." She paused thoughtfully, studying him closely. "May I ask where you've decided to go?" Miles hesitated briefly, maintaining professionalism. "Ascend Consulting." Heather raised an eyebrow, the subtle tension around her eyes betraying irritation. "Our competitor? That's a bold choice." "It wasn't an easy decision," Miles admitted gently, "but it's the right one for my career and growth." Heather sighed quietly, folding her hands methodically atop her desk. Her tone shifted, taking on the familiar lecturing note Miles had come to expect. "Miles, Beacon has invested considerable resources in your development. Opportunities like those here don't exist everywhere. I hope you considered that carefully." Miles maintained polite composure, despite feeling indignation at her implications. "I understand and appreciate those opportunities. However, my compensation and advancement haven't reflected my contributions. I believe Ascend's offer aligns more closely with my career goals." Heather's eyes hardened imperceptibly. "Very well. I'll inform HR to expedite the departure process. Kelly will oversee your exit today." Miles's surprise at her immediate dismissal was fleeting. He had anticipated some bitterness from Heather, but not such swift severity. "Heather, I intended to provide a standard 2-week notice." She shook her head firmly, voice crisp. "Given your new affiliation, immediate departure is standard procedure to protect company interests." Miles felt briefly stung but maintained calm dignity. He stood slowly. "Understood. Thank you for the opportunities." He exited her office quietly, a subtle murmur of curiosity sweeping through Beacon's office as coworkers watched him pass. Kelly, Beacon's HR assistant, approached apologetically, clearly embarrassed at her mandated escort role. "Miles, I'm so sorry about this," she whispered softly, guiding him toward his cubicle. Miles nodded kindly, aware Kelly wasn't at fault. Packing his belongings was awkwardly silent, colleagues avoiding direct eye contact. Miles's items filled just a small cardboard box: photos, personal files, a few sentimental desk mementos. 4 years reduced abruptly to insignificant possessions. In the lobby, Kelly offered a compassionate smile. "Beacon's losing a good person, Miles. Good luck at Ascend." He thanked her genuinely, stepping outside into fresh air, feeling paradoxically liberated despite the undignified exit. The gray sky above matched his bittersweet mood. Sitting in his car, Miles's phone vibrated. Aaron Blake's warm voice immediately brightened Miles's spirit. "Miles, Heather Wallace just called me, suggesting concerns about your professional conduct. Would you like to explain?" Miles felt irritation flare briefly, quickly suppressed by professionalism. "Heather seemed unhappy about my decision to leave Beacon for Ascend. She dismissed me immediately instead of honoring my 2-week notice." Aaron sighed knowingly. "I anticipated something like that. Listen, Miles, don't let it bother you. We trust your integrity and professionalism. We're excited to have you on board." Relief flooded Miles, gratitude evident. "Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate your confidence." The next several days before officially joining Ascend offered Miles unexpected reflection time. He considered how Beacon had gradually normalized neglect, though Heather systematically undermined employees' sense of worth. Miles realized sadly that his loyalty had never truly been reciprocated. To Heather and Beacon's current corporate management, employees represented expendable resources rather than valuable human assets. Meanwhile, supportive messages from soon-to-be colleagues at Ascend arrived steadily, offering warm welcomes. Jason Reed texted humorously, "Congratulations on escaping corporate purgatory. Ascend's lucky to have you." By Thursday evening, Miles had mentally distanced himself entirely from Beacon. He understood now clearly how unhealthy the atmosphere had become, subtly corrosive over time. Ascend represented not just a new job, but a reclaiming of professional dignity long neglected. Friday morning brought unexpected clarity. A short call from Kelly revealed additional unsettling news. Heather had begun privately questioning Miles's character to remaining Beacon employees, attempting to justify his sudden dismissal as a result of questionable loyalty and professionalism. Although initially hurt, Miles soon realized Heather's campaign merely reinforced how correct his decision was. Ascend valued transparency and respect, qualities Beacon had lost entirely. Aaron had shown trust explicitly, contrasting sharply with Heather's swift attempts at character sabotage. The contrast between Beacon's culture of fear and Ascend's open integrity solidified Miles's confidence in his career move. Heather's bitterness had inadvertently removed any lingering doubts Miles may have harbored. Sunday evening, before starting at Ascend, Miles visited a favorite coffee shop near Capitol Hill. Sipping coffee slowly, Miles finally felt optimism replace apprehension. Ascend represented professional rebirth. Renewal of self-worth Beacon had slowly eroded. Miles knew Ascend wouldn't offer perfection, yet he instinctively trusted its values of transparency, fairness, and genuine employee respect. His phone vibrated quietly, a short text from Aaron Blake. "Looking forward to your arrival tomorrow. Welcome aboard." Miles smiled quietly into his coffee. Beacon's era of dismissals, evasions, and empty promises was officially over. He had finally awakened from professional inertia, reclaiming authority over his career. Walking home beneath gentle evening rain, Miles Patterson felt ready for whatever Ascend offered, confident, empowered, and fully awake at last. Monday morning felt fresh, invigorating, and bright, a stark contrast to the persistent gloom Miles had associated with Beacon marketing. As he entered the sleek, spacious lobby of Ascend Consulting's downtown Seattle headquarters, Miles paused briefly, taking in his new surroundings with quiet gratitude. Glass walls offered stunning views of Puget Sound sparkling beneath pale sunlight, and employees moved about calmly, engaging in relaxed yet purposeful conversations. This serene professionalism was utterly different from Beacon's rigid, anxious atmosphere. "Miles," Jason Reed's cheerful voice broke through his reverie, his friend approaching with a wide, genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, buddy. Ready for orientation?" Miles laughed lightly, feeling tension ease from his shoulders. "Absolutely." Orientation proved refreshingly straightforward, led by approachable HR staff who genuinely listened and thoughtfully responded. Miles met various team members, each warmly welcoming him without the suspicion or competitiveness he'd grown accustomed to at Beacon. Even his new workspace felt spacious and comfortable, bright, open and welcoming. Late morning, Aaron Blake invited Miles to his expansive corner office, which overlooked the bustling streets below. "Welcome again, Miles," Aaron greeted warmly, gesturing towards a comfortable chair. "Let's discuss your initial projects. We trust you fully, given your background and skills." Miles felt genuine appreciation at Aaron's professional trust, so different from Heather's micromanagement and skepticism. "I appreciate that greatly, Aaron. I'm ready to dive right in." Aaron nodded approvingly. "Good. Your first major assignment involves managing our strategic partnership with Pine Grove Foods." Miles hesitated briefly in surprise. Pine Grove Foods had been among Beacon's most valuable clients, directly under Miles's previous oversight. Aaron smiled knowingly. "Pine Grove approached Ascend recently, indicating dissatisfaction with their service at Beacon since your departure. They specifically mentioned wanting your management expertise again." Miles felt quiet vindication mixed with excitement. "I'd be thrilled to reconnect with them." "We thought you might," Aaron replied warmly. "Pine Grove's account is substantial and strategic for Ascend, your primary focus over coming months. They emphasize specifically their desire for continuity and trust, something clearly disrupted since you left Beacon." Miles felt simultaneous professional pride and personal satisfaction. Pine Grove Foods' request validated his work and confirmed Beacon's recent missteps. Heather's careless handling of his departure had inadvertently jeopardized Beacon's key client relationship. Returning to his workspace energized, Miles quickly immersed himself into preparing a detailed strategic proposal for Pine Grove Foods. Ascend's resources and internal support significantly surpassed Beacon's limited infrastructure, enabling Miles's creativity to flourish. Days passed swiftly in a focused yet supportive atmosphere. Colleagues shared ideas freely, openly appreciating Miles's suggestions. The collaborative culture was empowering rather than competitive, a refreshing change. One evening, over casual drinks downtown, Jason inquired curiously, "How's Ascend measuring up so far?" Miles smiled genuinely. "Honestly, it's incredible. After Beacon, I'd almost forgotten companies could actually value employees." Jason laughed knowingly. "Exactly. Ascend's culture is deliberate. We protect and nurture it. Aaron Blake insists on mutual respect as a core value. Talented people leave toxic workplaces frequently because of undervaluation. Aaron recognizes this clearly." Miles nodded thoughtfully. He clearly values transparency. Pinegrove's return request demonstrates Beacon's flawed strategy. Directly treating employees poorly directly impacts client relationships. Jason agreed enthusiastically. Precisely. Loyalty works both ways. Beacon's failure to realize that led to costly consequences. As weeks progressed, Miles carefully drafted Pinegrove's strategic proposal, extensively detailing analytical insights, market strategies, and implementation plans. His prior knowledge allowed customized recommendations that resonated deeply with Pinegrove's leadership. Finally, the pivotal meeting arrived, Miles presenting his comprehensive proposal directly to Pinegrove's senior management team in Ascend's impressive boardroom. He stood confidently before the gathered executives, including Pinegrove's CEO, Rachel, a poised woman, respected industry-wide for her insightful business judgment. Thank you all sincerely for your willingness to re-engage with Ascend Consulting. Miles began calmly. This partnership aligns strategically and culturally between both organizations. Our shared values of transparency, client respect, and integrity guide our approach to collaboration. Rachel Adams nodded approvingly, encouraging Miles's confidence. He proceeded smoothly, clearly articulating Ascend's strategic plans, tailored precisely toward Pinegrove's growth objectives: expansion into digital markets, refined consumer analytics, and targeted branding campaigns. Midway through the presentation, Rachel interjected politely, her expression thoughtful. Miles, help us understand the transition process. We're concerned about disruptions given our recent Beacon experiences. Miles nodded, responding diplomatically, yet directly. A smooth transition depends significantly on clear communication and coordinated effort. Ascend prioritizes seamless client transitions. We'll collaborate fully with Beacon to ensure minimal disruption, provided their cooperation remains professional. Rachel smiled knowingly, appreciation clear. Given Beacon's recent actions, cooperation might prove challenging, but we appreciate your tactful optimism. After detailed discussions, Pinegrove signed Ascend's expansive agreement, enthusiastically $6 million multi-year strategic contract, significantly larger than previously at Beacon. Pinegrove Foods publicly praised Ascend's professional respect for employees, explicitly contrasting Beacon's recent client management decline. Within days, Seattle's local business journals prominently covered Pinegrove's strategic shift, explicitly highlighting Ascend's culture of fairness and Beacon's costly mistakes due to undervaluing skilled employees. Miles felt quiet validation reading these public acknowledgments. Beacon's mistreatment had finally produced tangible consequences. Losing Pinegrove Foods demonstrated concretely the damage neglecting employee respect ultimately caused. The following morning, Aaron visited Miles personally, congratulating him warmly. Your exceptional work secured Pinegrove decisively. We're proud of your leadership. Miles appreciated Aaron's sincerity deeply, responding modestly, Thank you. Ascend's support enabled this success significantly. Aaron smiled gently. Employees produce exceptional results when genuinely valued. You embody precisely why Ascend invests deeply in professional development and respectful treatment. Aaron's sincere statement resonated deeply with Miles, summarizing clearly everything previously missing at Beacon. Ascend represented precisely what professional integrity required: respectful employee valuation, yielding exceptional organizational results. Later that evening, Miles received a surprising message from Kelly, Beacon's HR assistant. Thought you should know Heather's holding emergency meetings today with upper management. Losing Pinegrove's account hurt significantly. People are talking. Miles felt no satisfaction hearing Beacon's struggles, only quiet confirmation that Heather's toxic leadership inevitably produced tangible consequences. Beacon's neglectful treatment directly impacted client relationships critically. Actions had repercussions, a fundamental professional truth. Heather ignored repeatedly. Miles finally understood clearly. He hadn't abandoned Beacon selfishly. Instead, Beacon had systematically abandoned its employees, costing itself critically. Miles Patterson finally stood confidently within Ascend Consulting. Professionally validated, personally respected, thriving genuinely within a culture deliberately designed toward fairness and mutual respect. He had finally reached true north professionally. The ripple effects from Pinegrove Foods' departure from Beacon marketing spread quickly through Seattle's business community. Clients began quietly reassessing their relationships with Beacon, concerned by the high-profile defection. Miles felt little surprise when two smaller accounts soon followed Pinegrove's example, citing concerns about Beacon's service quality and client management stability. Jason Reed shared industry insights over lunch one sunny afternoon at a small cafe near Ascend's offices. Beacon's losing credibility fast, Miles. Local business circles are noticing your departure exposed deeper internal issues. Miles sipped coffee thoughtfully, contemplating Beacon's ongoing decline. I never intended to harm Beacon. I genuinely hoped they'd realize their mistakes. But I suppose actions inevitably have consequences. Jason nodded knowingly. Exactly. Management ignoring employee satisfaction damages organizations deeply. Loyalty, trust, respect, those intangibles matter profoundly. Miles understood clearly. Beacon's management viewed employees merely as replaceable resources. Now that short-sighted attitude cost the company deeply, with tangible business losses clearly reflecting internal mismanagement. A week later, an unexpected email arrived from Beacon's HR department, formally inviting Miles to an exit interview. Standard company protocol he'd assumed Heather skipped during his abrupt departure. Initially hesitant, Miles accepted, curious about Beacon's intentions. Friday morning, Miles entered Beacon's familiar lobby once more, this time greeted by Mark Reynolds, Beacon's senior HR executive, known for fair neutrality. Good morning, Miles. Mark greeted politely, extending a cordial handshake. Thanks for joining us. Miles followed him quietly to a small private conference room. Once settled, Mark spoke calmly. Miles, your exit from Beacon exposed deeper issues. We're concerned and genuinely want honest insights into employee experiences here. Miles appreciated Mark's sincerity. I left because Beacon consistently undervalued my contributions. Heather repeatedly dismissed legitimate concerns about compensation and recognition. The culture degraded significantly after Greg Beacon retired. Mark nodded solemnly, taking detailed notes. Others expressed similar sentiments. Beacon's recent losses directly reflect deteriorating internal morale. Management ignored employee frustrations too long, assuming loyalty inevitable despite neglect. Miles responded gently yet honestly. Exactly. Loyalty requires mutual respect. Employees need genuine recognition, financial and otherwise. Heather routinely dismissed concerns, prioritizing short-term budget targets over meaningful human investment. Mark sighed thoughtfully. Beacon's senior leadership realizes now clearly we undervalued key talent, damaging both employee morale and client relationships significantly. Pine Grove Foods, leaving triggered deeper reflection internally. Losing your expertise cost Beacon dearly. Miles maintained professional composure, replying compassionately. Beacon can recover, but only if management commits sincerely to treating employees fairly, transparently, and respectfully. Mark nodded gratefully. Thank you. Miles, your feedback helps immensely. Hopefully, Beacon learns clearly from these costly mistakes. Miles left Beacon quietly afterward, reflecting pensively. Heather's dismissive management directly impacted Beacon profoundly. Losing Pine Grove Foods dramatically illustrated tangible consequences of neglecting employee respect. Actions inevitably carried repercussions. 2 weeks later, Jason shared surprising industry news privately. Beacon's senior management announced Heather Wallace's immediate departure. Officially, they're citing strategic organizational restructuring, but everyone knows Pine Grove's exit triggered it. Miles felt no personal satisfaction at Heather's termination, only quiet recognition that toxic leadership inevitably yielded damaging organizational results. Heather ignored employee respect repeatedly, costing Beacon critical business relationships, ultimately forcing senior management's intervention decisively. Miles's phone buzzed unexpectedly, a message from Kelly, Beacon's compassionate HR assistant. Miles, wanted you to know Heather's gone. Employees feel cautiously optimistic about genuine cultural improvements now. Pine Grove's departure forced Beacon to reconsider fundamentally. Miles replied kindly, wishing her luck sincerely. Kelly's brief message reinforced Miles's professional understanding. Clearly, employees desired authentic respect profoundly. Organizations dismissing employee satisfaction risked costly consequences inevitably. Late that evening, Miles received another message from Heather herself, surprisingly direct yet respectful. Miles, professionally, I acknowledge handling your departure poorly. My approach failed Beacon significantly. I genuinely hope Ascend appreciates your talents appropriately. Regards, Heather. Miles appreciated Heather's unexpected professionalism deeply, recognizing genuine humility beneath her terse acknowledgement. He responded courteously. Thank you sincerely, Heather. I appreciate your acknowledgement and wish you professional success, genuinely moving forward. Miles understood clearly. Heather learned painfully but profoundly. Undervaluing talented employees ultimately proved organizationally damaging. Her abrupt termination forced deeper personal and professional reflection inevitably. Aaron Blake approached Miles warmly the following afternoon, privately congratulating him on exemplary client leadership demonstrated since joining Ascend. Your professional integrity continues impressing clients significantly, Miles. Pine Grove Foods leadership repeatedly praises your management, directly highlighting Ascend's commitment to employee respect publicly. Miles responded modestly, sincerely appreciative of Ascend's supportive environment. Aaron continued thoughtfully. Employees perform best when genuinely valued, something Beacon learned painfully late. Your situation demonstrated clearly. Respect breeds loyalty profoundly. Neglect destroys it quickly. Ascend consciously chooses fairness. Deliberately, your leadership reinforces our culture substantially. Miles felt genuine pride, reflecting Aaron's heartfelt words deeply. Ascend represented professionally precisely what Beacon lacked: fundamental organizational respect, enabling genuine employee satisfaction significantly. That evening, Miles reflected pensively over quiet dinner, downtown, realizing fully his professional journey's critical lessons clearly. Organizational respect directly enabled profound employee loyalty. Ignoring employee satisfaction inevitably damaged companies, dramatically tangible consequences. Beacon learned painfully through Heather's mismanagement and Miles's departure decisively. Jason texted humorously, yet insightfully. Beacon learned an expensive professional lesson clearly. Respect employees genuinely. You lose talented people decisively. Miles smiled knowingly, responding thoughtfully. Absolutely. Respect matters profoundly. Organizations ignoring this inevitably face costly repercussions inevitably. Miles understood fully now professionally. He hadn't abandoned Beacon thoughtlessly. Instead, Beacon's management repeatedly abandoned employee respect deliberately, forcing talented individuals inevitably toward fairer professional environments significantly. Monday morning, Miles returned confidently to Ascend. Consulting professionally, fulfilled genuinely, respected personally, thriving profoundly within a deliberate organizational culture, consciously prioritizing genuine employee respect deeply. Miles Patterson finally understood clearly. Professionally, he discovered his true north decisively. Spring arrived in Seattle with a quiet, elegant cherry blossoms lining Capitol Hill, soft rain washing the streets clean, and sunlight returning in measured glances through the cloud cover. For Miles Patterson, life had taken on a sense of steady balance: work, relationships, and a career rooted in clarity, purpose, and genuine respect. It had been nearly 6 months since he left Beacon Marketing. 6 months since he stepped out of a system that undervalued him and into one that had elevated his contributions and treated him like a leader, not just a resource. At Ascend Consulting, Miles had found more than a job. He had found a place that mirrored the values he thought were lost in corporate America. Strategic decisions were made with integrity. Promotions were tied to performance, not politics. Feedback was encouraged, not punished. And perhaps most importantly, his work had begun to influence real change, not just for clients like Pine Grove Foods, but for the company culture itself. One Thursday morning, Aaron Blake called Miles into his office for a quick one-on-one. The tall windows offered a pristine view of Lake Union shimmering under the light. Miles, Aaron began, Pine Grove's board just finalized their next phase of expansion. They've requested your continued leadership and want you to oversee not just their digital strategy, but a cross-regional launch across the West Coast. Miles raised an eyebrow. That's quite an ask. Aaron smiled. They trust you, and honestly, so do I. Your performance the last few quarters has been nothing short of exemplary. You've led with clarity, tact, and impact. So, we're offering you the role of Director of Strategic Partnerships. Miles blinked. Aaron continued. It's a step up from your current position. A formal promotion. It comes with a team, a larger budget, and of course a compensation adjustment to reflect the level of responsibility. You've earned it. Miles nodded slowly, emotion caught in his chest. Not from shock, but from the quiet satisfaction of being seen. Thank you, Aaron. I'd be honored. As the news rippled through the company, messages of congratulations poured in, genuine, supportive, and celebratory. Jason sent a particularly memorable Slack message. Told you this place pays people what they're worth. Now go show them what real leadership looks like. Miles took the weekend to visit his parents in Spokane. His father, who had spent nearly 4 decades at a single company, watched his son now with a new understanding. I always told you to stick it out, his father said over a quiet backyard dinner. But I realize now, sticking it out only works when the company sticks with you too. Miles smiled at the man who once believed loyalty alone was the currency of growth. Loyalty's not dead, Dad. It just has to go both ways. His mother, ever the quiet observer, beamed. You look lighter, happier, like you're doing what you were meant to. He was. Back in Seattle, Ascend began positioning itself as a leading force in the consulting world. Other companies took notice not just of their business wins, but of how they retained talent. Articles in Puget Sound Business Journal praised Ascend's culture, citing it as a model for modern employee-centered organizations. Meanwhile, Beacon Marketing continued to struggle. Pine Grove's departure had triggered other clients to reevaluate. Their internal morale hadn't recovered since Heather Wallace's removal. Leadership turnover became frequent, and the firm slowly began fading from relevance. One afternoon, as Miles wrapped up a meeting, he received a surprise email. The subject line read, Coffee? It was from Kelly. Hey, Miles. Just wanted to say again that it's been inspiring to watch your trajectory from afar. Things are, well, different here. Some of us are quietly looking elsewhere. Would love to catch up if you're ever free for coffee. I have questions about Ascend. Miles responded warmly. He remembered how Kelly had treated him with dignity during his final hours at Beacon. She had always been more than just HR. She was a human who saw people. Hi, Kelly. Absolutely. Would be glad to grab coffee. Let me know when and where. And for what it's worth, there are better places out there. I found one. And so can you. That evening, standing by his apartment window as golden light spilled across the skyline, Miles reflected on the journey that had brought him here, not just a physical move between companies, but an emotional and ethical crossing from quiet frustration to empowered self-respect. He remembered the endless days at Beacon, the stale coffee, the broken copier no one fixed, the empty promises Heather repeated. He remembered how hard it was to take that first step, to believe he deserved better. And now he led teams. He influenced strategy. He walked into rooms where his voice mattered. His ideas weren't just tolerated, they were implemented. He didn't just work somewhere. He belonged. His phone buzzed another message from Jason. Pine Grove just called me raving about your new launch strategy. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Miles set the phone down and smiled. He wasn't chasing titles anymore. He wasn't trying to prove his worth. He was simply standing in it. A year later, Miles stood at the Ascend holiday party, now as one of the firm's senior leaders. He gave a short toast near the end of the evening, raising his glass amid twinkling lights and the sound of laughter. I used to think that if you worked hard enough, someone would eventually notice. That patience alone was enough. But I learned that knowing your worth means not waiting forever. It means being brave enough to walk away when you're being taken for granted. I found a place that didn't just notice me, they invested in me. And it changed everything. Here's to more of that for all of us. Applause erupted, glasses clinked, and Miles smiled through it all. He had found his true north. And this time, he wasn't letting go.